GettingPositiveKarmaNow.com presents Bhagavad Gita for All, lectures by Nalan K. Narula, recorded in front of a live audience.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The last time we had completed chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, which was about Karma Yoga in renunciation. So, action in renunciation, how to detach yourself from the material modes of nature, which attachment actually keeps us in a miserable condition, and how we can elevate ourselves to a point where we do not get entangled in the material activities that we necessarily do. So, there was, if I go back to chapter 5 as a review, and before we come to the conclusion of chapter 5, Sri Krishna is telling Arjun that one who is self-satisfied, satisfied within the self, which means connecting with the soul self and the super soul. So that is the step-up process. Happy from within, the Anta Sukha, and Anta Arama, that he is also active internally, and Anta Jyoti, aiming within. And he is liberated, Brahma Nirvanam Brahma Bhuta Adhigacchati. This is text 24 of chapter 5. So Yo anta sukho antara ramas tathantar jyotirevaya sa yogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto adhigacchati. So such a person who is internally active to connect with the energies of the Supreme, and he is illuminated internally, he is happy within, he is not entangled with the attachments to the objects of the senses, the material objects of the senses. So the internal is significant because the senses are outwardly moving towards the objects of the senses. For example, the eyes, the vision is looking at objects, the sense of smell is smelling fragrances, ear is hearing externally. So here the clarification is, or the clarity is being given, that one who is active internally rather than externally, and he is happy within himself and illuminated within, that person is actually a perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. So the key word is ultimately. So he is not there already, it's a process. So Brahma Nirvanam Brahma Bhuta, self-realized, liberated in the Supreme. Adhigacchati, he gets to that point. He is on the path, on the movement to that place. And then the next text in chapter 5, text 26, Kama Krodha Vimuktanam Yatinam Yata Chetasam Abhito Brahma Nirvanam Vartate Viditatmanam. So Kama Krodh, desires, anger, Vimuktanam, one who is liberated from, such a saintly person has a control over the mind. Yeta Chetasam, Chetara is the consciousness, and in that aspect, in that context, it is referring to the mind. The consciousness, the mind is controlled, and Abhita means to be shortly achieved, that is going to be happening in the near future. Brahma Nirvanam Vartate Viditatmanam. So such a person is assured that in the coming time to come, shortly, the person will be liberated in the realization of the Supreme, because he's already on the path, he's already so liberated, and he will achieve the full form of it. And such a person is Vidit Atmanam, self-realized. And then the next two texts, 27 and 28, is now a reference to Ashtang Yoga, which is coming up in chapter 6, which we'll be starting today. It is about the technical, analytical aspect of how to go there. The yoga methods, popularly known, the Ashtang Yoga method. So here it is that you shut out all the external sense objects, keep the eyes and visions concentrated between the eyebrows, suspending the ingoing and outgoing breath within the nostrils, thereby controlling mind, sense, intelligence. And such a transcendentalist becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. And one who is always in that state is certainly liberated. So, one of the ways that we can actually control anxiety is by following a breathing process. For example, if you take in breaths and hold it for a while and exhale few times a day, that is very de-stressing. So the mind comes under control, the anger, the desire, everything starts to balance out. So typically in yoga exercises, methodologies, they will tell you inhale for a count of 4, hold the count for 7 or 8 beats, and then exhale for 7 or 8 beats. So if a person is doing that a few times a day and making sure that the air goes down to the abdominal part by expanding the abdominal area, then by doing that, the senses, the mind starts to come under control. Okay. Then we have text 29 of chapter 5, which is the conclusion of chapter 5, and it is a very often quoted text. Bhoktaram yagatapsam sarvalok maheshwaram sukhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim rikshati. Bhoktaram yagatapsam. Krishna is saying, I am the beneficiary, I am the receiver of all sacrifices and penances. And Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, I am the supreme lord of all the planetary systems, of all those who live there, the administrators, the demigods. Suhridam, I am the benefactor, the well-disposed well-wisher of all, Bhutanam, of all living entities. And one who knows this, Gyatva Mam, one who knows me, Krishna, as such, what happens to him? Shantim Richati. He gets relief from the pangs of material nature. Because he is understanding that everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is to be done for the purpose of Krishna, for his satisfaction, that he is the receiver of all benefits, all aspects of sacrifices. You're actually invoking him. Even though you may be invoking some demigods, ultimately he is the receiver. He is the final authority, and the demigods are only working on his behalf. So, Bhoktaram Yag Tapsam, very important, that a person who knows that I am the end point of everything, the source, the beginning and the end of everything. It all comes to me. And one who is working with that consciousness and realization, he gets relief, Shanti. He gets relief. He is getting automatically detached from the miserable condition of material nature, which is being troubled by Kama, Krodh, anger, lust, desire, thwarted desires, and one is stimulated by the passions or the ignorance modes, by the sensory objects, and the senses have to actually go within. So one whose senses are inwardly turned, they are so much, gaining relief. So if there are any questions about this chapter 5, that action in renunciation, karma yoga in renunciation, I will take it, and then we will move on to chapter 6. Any questions? No? Okay. Yes.
How does one put this into practice at all times so that one is constantly reminded of this?
Yes. How does one practice this? Is by going inwardly and connecting with the flow of the healing energy that is within you as a healer. And as you look inwardly, as you move your consciousness inwardly, you will achieve that instantly. So which is why when you are doing your healing process, for example, and you are focusing on the flow of the energy, how the sensations are, your mind is automatically in that flow, and then that is balanced out, and that quality of shanti is achieved. So which is why when you do the healing and you are dedicating your time to do that, there is this great peacefulness that comes. Now, similar things can happen when you chant mantras. For example, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is the chant for liberation for all of mankind, as mentioned in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, also the whole appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who promoted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is of course Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That is given reference to in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. And 500 odd years ago he appeared himself to show people what is achievable. So that's one method also. The point is to connect with the internal flow of the divine energy, to connect with the soul, the super soul. And in the case of healers, they are connecting with the flow of energy. So many people find it much easier to do that than to chant mantras. Mantras can be chanted, no, not a problem. The mantras that promote you in that direction, they are fine. But the mind is very restless by its nature. So it runs here and there. So you'll be chanting a mantra and you'll be suddenly finding yourself the mantra is not being chanted properly, or you will have stopped and your mind is racing in different directions. But when you do your healing and you're connected with the healing flow, even though your mind is racing in different directions, the healing energy is going in those directions to sort things out. So you'll gradually find that you come to a point where the mind is quite silent. It is inactive, there is the flow of energy, there is, you can say that when you're using the symbols or chanting the names of the symbols or the prayers, the mind is similarly engaged as when you would chant a mantra, and it is engaged in moving in that direction. So we need to understand that we have to fulfill our duties, and when we think in terms of a duty, we become very detached in terms of feeling, either elated or feeling depressed. Of course, if you think, oh my God, I've got so many duties and I'm stuck, and that's a different story. But if you look at what you're doing as a discharge of your duty, which is basically a karmic debt. So you should actually understand that you're going to a better place, you're doing a better action, because by discharging your karmic debts as duties, you are getting rid of some more binding consequence karma. In the whole of chapter 5, Sri Krishna has explained to Arjun that the bottom line is to be free of binding consequence karma. So it is to act, to do karma in a particular way that frees you from the binding consequence of karma. And that is spiritualized action. Akarma. Karma that has no binding consequences in future. It may have consequences, and it does, but there are no future binding consequences that you have to come back and pay off a debt or you have to collect from somebody. So this works in both ways, that your credits are also wiped out in terms of receivables, and your payables in terms of debt is also wiped out, but you get a different quality of receivables and payables. Those receivables and payables, when they are spiritualized, they have no end point in terms of continuity. There's no continuity. So you get released from the material zone of existence. So if we consider that everything is to be done for Krishna's purpose, then we are very much aligned in that area, and so therefore we have a detachment from consequences, and even we are detached from whether the result comes or it doesn't come. But that doesn't stop us from doing our work honestly. So if you look at the 5 principles of Reiki, they embody in highly codified, concentrated form all this information that is there in the Bhagavad Gita. So that is a short reference, and then the expansion you can make by consulting the Bhagavad Gita and the guidance that you get from there. Yes.
Seems like majority of our time is spending in our occupation. So when you, with this thought that you should be working for, in service of Lord Krishna, should you also look at your occupation in the same way, that is it something that's creating value to other people, like what you're doing, something I feel for my job, I'm grateful, it's giving me money, it's giving me independence, but should you start thinking that whatever work you're doing, because major time of your life that you're spending doing that work, that also should add value to in some way or in service?
Well, anything that you are doing as a profession or as an occupation, more or less would be adding some value. It would be giving some benefit. I'm not talking about things that are clearly not bona fide or against the interests of people. If you are engaged in an activity that is in the interest of people, it is giving some value, it is giving some relief, it is giving some benefit. I'm not talking about illegal activities. Those are also giving some benefit to somebody and possibly some relief. Well, definitely relief in terms of, finances if somebody is stealing. But that is not a recommended activity. So it's not those kind of benefits that we are talking about. So those are forbidden activities. So those are vikarma. So vikarma are forbidden, not to do those things. So, but they also have the component of giving you some relief, isn't it? You do something illegal, you are doing it for some relief, correct? But it is not. It is a forbidden activity. It is not a recommended activity, and you will get consequences, punishing consequences, to teach you that that is not to be done. So we don't want to go there, right? Then we do not want to do activities which are solely pious activities. That you could be doing pious activities. It's not that it's not recommended, by the way. You are encouraged to do pious activities. But in what mode are you doing those pious activities? Is it in the mode of ignorance, passion, or in the mode of goodness? So mode of ignorance and passion would be simply that, I'm such a pious person. The ego is enhanced. And in ignorance, for example, if you are typically bandits go to Devi Mandir before they execute a banditry job, and they offer oblations to Kali and getting her blessings, so they think will help them to succeed in their nefarious activity. So this is the wrong usage. So we have to be careful as to in what way are we doing these things. So we need to see that we are offering a benefit for the progressive purposes, that is good. We are adding value to somebody, that is good. You can put on that AC. That AC is off.
So when you're choosing a profession, even in that, like how should one choose their profession? Think.
How should you
Or
choose
that
your
it
profession?
should be of, ultimately it should be of service.
The thing is that you will choose your profession ideally based on what is your interest. What is it that you like to do? What is your passion in life? And in that area, you should choose a profession. Something that you can do well, something that you can sustain doing. That is the way to choose a profession. Not that what's making money today. Making money is not the way to go and choose a profession. There has to be an interest, there has to be a drive. What do you want to do? Money will come. Name and fame will come if it has to come. But that should not be a driving force. So when you are driven by those forces, then by those external forces, looking for the external rather than the internal, you are going to end up in trouble. Okay, so we have time for starting the 6th chapter. So we will start with chapter 6 on Sankhya Yoga, which is also analytical study of the Ashtanga Yoga system. So we will begin with that. So text number 1, Shri Krishna speaks. This is chapter 6. अनाश्रिता कर्म फलम कार्यन कर्म करोति या सन्यासी च योगी च ना निराग्निर ना चाक्रिया. So this is in continuation to what we have been speaking and what Krishna has been explaining to Arjun, that one who is not attached to the results of his work and who works as he is obliged to work. Obligated, again there is the concept of owing or debt. One who is obligated, he is working, it is an obligatory work, and when he is doing that, he is considered to be a renounced person, and not one who is externally following the form of doing no work as a sannyasi or not lighting a fire. Niragnir nacha akriya. Akriya means one who has no duties. So typically what does that mean? A sannyasi in the renounced order of life means sannyas, he has given up the fire. He is not supposed to cook. He is supposed to live on what the universe offers him. So he is not supposed to do cooking, and doesn't have any obligatory technical duties to execute. He is freed from that, and his only focus is to work with the spiritual energies. But Krishna is saying that a person who is not attached to the fruits of the work and who works as he is obligated, he is actually the renounced person. Not the person who lights no fire and performs no work or performs no duties. So this is a very radical, revolutionary statement because it negates what technical sannyasis are doing. He's saying that's not a sannyasi, that's not a renounced person, unless he is working like this. So that is the overriding condition. A person who is not attached to the results of their work and who works as he is obligated, such a person is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, yogi. He is the true yogi who is actually linked. Yoga means to link with the divine. So he is the one who is truly linked to the divine, not the person who is making the external otherwise show of having no duty to perform, and he is not lighting any fire, and he is just receiving benefits from others. Okay. So this is a very heavy statement. Because everyone is looking for doing something for actually self-satisfaction. So Krishna is saying that one who works without the desire to enjoy the fruits of one's actions, the results of your work, who is not attached, which means in the previous chapter Krishna said a person should not be swayed either to too much happiness or too much misery. He should be at balance. So that balance aspect is being brought out here. So if somebody is already in that space, he is the true yogi. So when you do your healing, when you are working on the spiritual path that way, and you are balanced in that state and unswayed by other considerations and conditions, but just the goal of where you have to go, you are a true sannyasi. So then in text number 2 of chapter 6, Krishna is saying, Yam sannyasam iti prahu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahi asanyasta sankalpa yogi bhavati kaschana. So yam sannyasam iti prahur yogam tam vidhi pandava nahi asanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana. Yam sannyasam. What is called renunciation? He is now expanding on his previous statement. This, iti, prahu, they say, is yogam, linking with the divine. So sannyas means to link with the divine. This is expansion of the previous thought, previous statement. Tam vidhi, you must know this Pandava, son of Pandu, Arjun. Nahi asanyasta. So without giving up the desire for sense gratification, sankalpa, sense, self-satisfaction, sense gratification, you cannot be a yogi. So this is the key point, that without giving up the desire for self-satisfaction, you can't be a yogi. Now this is a very prickling statement. So everyone is working for some desire, some result. What is that? So we want this, we want that. I want to achieve a better life. I want to achieve a better facility for myself. I want a better house. I want a better job. I want more money. I want. So many I wants are there. Now, when you are working in the healing mode, in the spiritual mode, I'm specifically referring now to the healing energies of Reiki and the KQ force. All your desires, all your wants, we ask you please cover this with the healing energy of the divine, of the healing force. So you are introducing the aspect of the divine rectificatory energy of healing in all that you do. You cannot suddenly be without desire. Krishna also says that. So how do you engage? You engage by involving Krishna in everything. You involve Krishna's energies in everything. And as a practice, as you continue your practice of healing, as you continue your practice of removing the negative training that we have in the material universe to run after sense gratificatory objectives, that is gradually through the healing process nullified. So at the end of it, you will come to a point where you will be doing those things. Come to the same point that Krishna has said, that you do all these things, but without the attachment to results. You are doing it not that, if I do this much more, I'll get this result. You are doing it because you have to do it. It is obligatory. You're obliged to do it. So that removes a certain sense of ownership. So that ownership from that sense, in that context, is removed, but the responsibility is not, because it's an obligation. So this is a little tricky to navigate. What does this actually mean? This means that I work as though it's my obligation, but I'm not neglecting other things that I have to do in the single-minded pursuit of this so-called gratification of the senses, or the objectives that are the achievement objectives of the senses. So one who is satisfied within, who is connecting with the inner flow of joy, with the inner flow of the healing energy, he is the one who is actually the yogi, the mystic yogi, because he is doing everything for the satisfaction. Previously Krishna has said, Bhoktaram Yaga Tapsam, I am the beneficiary or receiver of all sacrifices, of all processes that you are doing in the yagyas. So better to connect with that understanding. So when you have that understanding that actually everything you are doing is actually for the divine, how much sense of ownership can you have? Very little. Ultimately nil. Because if you keep that just one line in mind of that one shlok, the last shlok of chapter 5, Bhoktaram Yagatapsa, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, I am, Krishna is saying, everything is mine. So then where do I come in this huge mine that is Krishna's, this huge ownership? I am not an owner. Now that need not be a cause of depression or unhappiness. It's a relief. I don't take ownership responsibility. So no calm and no krodh, no desire, no lust, no anger, which is the third principle of Reiki. Just for today I shall not anger. Because I have no ownership responsibility. We have been teaching you this for years. So when you give up ownership responsibility, it doesn't mean you give up responsibility. That is the thing that you have to understand. It is very childish to think I've given up ownership responsibility, so I don't have to do anything. No, you have to do. But you don't own it. But you're obliged. So this is the point that you need to understand. I'm going to pause here because this is a watershed position where you need to really come to grips with this idea. How are you actually going to work? So this is text 2. What is called renunciation is the same as linking to the divine within and acting accordingly, acting according to the obligation one has. And this will gradually get us to the yogi platform. So is there any questions required for this one, any clarifications? I'll be happy to take it. Somebody wants to go out?
There is a mouse here, he wants to go out.
Mouse wants to go out?
Yes, sir, he's
We'll
been
run around the whole house.
It's a little one here, he comes and sits here and then goes inside.
Why don't you adopt him? Let me tell them there is a mouse. Just shut the door.
So it's just come out of here only.
Just shut the door. Shut the door. And we'll put a mouse trap and then we'll release him far away. हेलो, एक छोटी चूहिया है यहाँ पे घूम रही है कमरे में, तो इधर हम इसको दरवाज़ा खोल दें या ऐसे ही यहाँ पे वो माउस ट्रैप लगाएंगे? हाँ हाँ ठीक, ओके. Don't let it out. Even then we won't be able to find it. And they'll come and then they will capture it and then release it far away. Okay. So, any questions about action and renunciation?
Again, like linking it back to work. So supposing like sometimes when you're thinking that there's a lot of overtime that you're having to do in office, so should you like then think of it that I'm obligated? It's probably that I need to discharge more duties here, and that's why if
See, your work requirement, you are required to do overtime because you're not able to do your work, or it's dependent on others. That is a question you need to ask. If it is that your performance is not up to the mark, then you need to change that. If it is because other people are not working efficiently and therefore you are required to do overtime, you need to look at that. So, which is it? Do you know?
like here, how I felt that sometimes it's like a culture. Nobody wants to leave on time because
Yeah, because then you're seen as being, working less.
yeah.
Hmm. So those are the politics of the place. Well, whatever it is, use the time. If you have extra time and you don't have the work, but your physical presence is required, there is what you're saying. Is that correct? Or you are
Seems
actually
like that,
doing
because I
some
feel
work
that
also.
one can complete the work.
So you complete the work and use the rest of the time to look internally, to do your healing, to connect with this aspect of strengthening your ties with the spiritual energies. Use that time. If you have no work, then you can always use the time to upgrade your skill set. If you don't have that much work, you have an internet connection, educate yourself. I'm not advising you go online and start watching movies and things like that. You have the time, you have to sit there because everybody is sitting there. You have to look busy. You have to look as though you're doing some work.
Stretching.
So then it's better you find another organization. Ideally. But while you're there, then you have all these methods. I get people telling me we can't leave till the boss goes. The boss comes at 1 o'clock. He goes at 9 and we are coming here at 9 in the morning. So we've had it. We have a 12-hour day. He chills out, comes at 1, goes for lunch, sleeps for 3 hours. All that's, goes for golf. Well, find another organization. We don't want to be that. Okay. Anything else?
Anu has a question.
Yes.
He says she wants explanation, ownership, responsibility.
She wants to know the difference between ownership and responsibility.
How to distinguish where we are in the series, if being ownership attached and just discharging duty.
Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say there's a lawyer. He is representing a client. He has a responsibility, he does not have any ownership. Okay? That clear? He has to do his best job, but he is not having ownership. So similarly, any consultant, any advisor, he doesn't have ownership. He has a responsibility to ensure that the best possible is done, and that's it. Is that clear?
I've seen like the lawyer, he would do his arguments and everything to the best of his
Right.
abilities and whatever material we've given him.
Right.
And then after finishing all that, he'll just come out and say, okay, fine, just wait for the result and let me know what the result is.
Exactly. Yeah. Chill out. So this is how you should do it. You do your work, result is not in your hand.
So that's like you had sent healing to both the murderer and the persons who were the victims. You said both.
Yes, and healing to the perpetrator as well as the victims of anything. Absolutely. Equal opportunity. If we are asked to represent one side, we will represent one side. But we will also part of that representation means that the other side should also be healed so that our purpose is also manifest. So in that process, the healing travels very far. It's not exclusive, is what I'm saying, in that sense, what the point that you have raised. So the healing is not exclusive, it goes even to the other side, but certainly we are asking that we are the primary beneficiaries of whatever is happening. And that's our duty, it is a duty. If we don't get the result, no problem. Like we have this case running of a lady who wants to marry someone, has been wanting to marry them for the last 12 years, and her family was objecting. Now she's almost 40, and now the family has agreed. Now the other family is saying it's too late. And they had approached us. We said we will send healing, and